Hey, my name is Noah Bennett. I'm 29 years old and I live alone on a small, tired farm just outside the town of Ashford, Pennsylvania. The nearest neighbor is a good 20-minute drive away, which suits me fine. The place used to belong to my grandfather, then my father, and now it's mine. It's not the kind of farm you see in postcards. The wooden fences are rotting in places, the old horse barn leaks when it rains hard, and the apple orchard hasn't been properly pruned in years. I have a few rescue horses in the small paddock behind the barn, animals nobody else wanted. I fix things, feed them, and try not to think too much. 3 years ago, I left a decent engineering job in Pittsburgh after my father died of a heart attack. I came back here because someone had to. A year after that, my fiancée Hannah was killed in a car accident on her way to visit me. Since then, I've kept my head down and my hands busy. Mornings start early, feed the horses, check the fences, walk the orchard. Evenings end the same way. A quiet dinner, black coffee on the front porch, and the sound of wind moving through the trees. I don't complain. I don't talk about the past. I just keep going. That night, the rain came down hard. It had been building all afternoon, and by 10 o'clock, the wind was slamming against the house, and the thunder was rolling low across the fields. I had just finished checking the horses when I heard it. 3 weak knocks on the main gate. At first, I thought it was a branch. Then it came again, softer this time, almost hesitant. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The rain hit me instantly, cold and sharp. When I reached the gate and shone the light through the bars, I saw her. She looked about 24, maybe 25, soaked to the skin. Dark hair plastered to her face, a thin jacket clinging to her shoulders, old sneakers caked in mud. One hand clutched a small canvas bag. The other gripped the gatepost like she might fall if she let go. There was a fresh bruise on her left wrist, purple and ugly against her skin. Her eyes met mine, tired, guarded, and strangely calm, like she had already accepted whatever came next. "I'm sorry," she said, voice hoarse from the cold. "I just need some water. Then I'll go." I looked at her wrist again. The bruise wasn't brand new, but it wasn't old either. "You're standing in the middle of nowhere in a storm," I said. "Water isn't the only thing you need." She shook her head quickly. "I don't want to cause trouble." "Trouble's already here. You're 8 miles from town and it's almost midnight." She studied me for a long moment, rain running down her face. I took one slow step back so she wouldn't feel cornered. "My name's Noah. I live alone. There's hot water, clean towels, and a couch. You can sit in the kitchen, drink something warm, and decide what you want to do after that. No one's going to hurt you here." She didn't move right away, then finally she stepped through the gate. Her name was Rosie Alvarez. I learned that after I brought her inside, handed her a thick towel and one of my flannel shirts, and set a glass of water on the kitchen table. She sat with both hands wrapped around the glass like someone might try to take it from her. She drank in small, careful sips, even though she was clearly thirsty. I leaned against the counter. "You walked from Route 17? She nodded without looking up. "That was over 10 miles. I didn't ask why. A weak whinny came from the barn. The young foal I'd taken in 3 days earlier had been running a low fever all day. I thought he was improving, but that sound said otherwise. I stood up immediately. Rosie lifted her head. "A foal?" I paused. "You know horses?" "A little." She pushed her chair back and followed me out into the rain without another word. Under the yellow barn light, the foal lay curled in the straw, breathing fast. Rosie knelt slowly, not touching him at first, just letting him smell her hand. Then she took the milk bottle I'd been using, warmed it in a bucket of hot water, and sat down lower so she was almost eye level with him. She spoke in a soft, steady murmur I couldn't quite hear. 10 minutes later, the foal was drinking. I stood there watching her, rainwater still dripping from my hair, and felt something shift in my chest. This girl who had shown up at my gate looking like she'd run through hell was now calming a sick animal with nothing but patience and quiet hands. When the foal finally settled, Rosie stood up. Her face was pale with exhaustion. "Thank you," she said. "I should go now." I glanced outside. The rain hadn't let up. The wind was still howling. "You don't have anywhere to go, do you?" She didn't answer. I took a breath. "You can stay tonight. The living room couch is comfortable. The door has a lock. You can use it from the inside if it makes you feel better. In the morning, if you still want to leave, I'll drive you to the bus station." She looked at me for a long time. Rain hammered the barn roof above us. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. Then she nodded. Just once. And that was how Rosie Alvarez came to spend her first night at Bennett Farm. I woke up at 5 like I always did, the sky still dark outside my bedroom window. For a few seconds I lay there listening to the rain tapping against the roof, wondering if last night had been a dream. Then I remembered the girl on the couch and the way she had looked at me when she nodded. I got dressed and headed to the kitchen, half expecting the living room to be empty. But when I stepped through the doorway, Rosie was already there. She stood at the sink in my flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up, washing the 2 glasses we had used the night before. Her hair was tied back in a loose knot, still damp at the ends. On the stove, a pot of coffee was just starting to perk. She glanced over her shoulder when she heard me. "I didn't know how you take it," she said quietly, "so I made it black." I drink it black. Then I got lucky. The corner of my mouth lifted before I could stop it. It was the first time I had smiled in days without forcing it. She finished drying the glasses and set them on the counter. "I'll leave after breakfast. I don't want to overstay." I nodded, but something in my chest tightened at the thought. All right. We ate in near silence, scrambled eggs and toast I threw together. Rosie kept her eyes on her plate, but I noticed how she sat. Back straight, always angled toward the door, like someone who had learned to watch exits. After we finished, she stood up and carried her plate to the sink. "Thank you for last night. And for the clothes." "You're welcome." She hesitated at the door, bag already in her hand. "I can walk to the main road. Someone will pick me up." Before I could answer, a weak, pitiful whinny drifted in from the barn, the same sound from last night. I set my coffee down and grabbed my jacket. Rosie paused with her hand on the doorknob. "The foal?" "Yeah, he was better yesterday, but..." She looked toward the barn, then back at me. "If you don't mind, I could stay a few more hours, just until he settles." I studied her face. She wasn't offering out of politeness. There was genuine worry in her eyes. "All right," I said. "A few hours." Those few hours turned into the rest of the day. By late afternoon, the foal was stable again, and Rosie had somehow reorganized the entire medicine cabinet in the tack room without being asked. She moved with quiet efficiency, checking temperatures, labeling bottles, even sweeping the aisle between stalls. I watched her from the doorway and felt something strange settle in my chest. Something that wasn't quite peace, but wasn't loneliness either. She stayed that night too. And the next. By the 4th day, I stopped pretending I was surprised when I found her in the kitchen every morning making coffee. She had started feeding the horses before I even got outside. She knew which one liked their grain mixed with a little molasses and which one needed to be talked to softly before you put the halter on. It was like she had lived here for months instead of days. I didn't ask about her past, not because I wasn't curious, but because I saw the way she flinched every time a car drove past on the dirt road. The way she always positioned herself so she could see the front door from wherever she was working. The way she kept that small canvas bag within arm's reach at all times, like she needed to be ready to run. I knew that kind of fear. I had lived with it myself after Hannah died. On the 6th day, while we were mending a section of fence in the back pasture, I finally said what I had been thinking. "I could use some help around here," I told her. "Real help. I can't pay much, but there's a room at the end of the hall, 3 meals a day, and I'll give you something every Friday if you want it." Rosie stopped hammering and looked at me. The wind pulled a strand of hair across her face. She didn't brush it away. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "No, I don't." "Then why would you trust me with your home?" I thought about the way she had calmed the foal that first night. The way she spoke to the older rescue horses like they were old friends. The way the house had started to feel less empty the moment she began moving through it. "I saw how you treated something weaker than you when nobody asked you to," I said. "That tells me more than a resume ever could." She looked down at the fence post between us. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then, very quietly, "I'll stay, but I want to earn it. I don't want to feel like I'm taking charity." Fair enough. That evening, we ate bean soup at the kitchen table while rain fell softly outside. It was the first real conversation we had that wasn't about work or the animals. "This place used to be happier, didn't it?" she asked, stirring her spoon slowly. I set my spoon down. "Yeah, before someone died." I met her eyes. She wasn't prying. She was just seeing the house the way it really was. My fiancée, I said. Hannah, 3 years ago. Rosie nodded once. She didn't offer the usual empty phrases, no, I'm so sorry, followed by a story about how time heals everything. She just sat with it. I'm sorry, she said finally, and that was all. We finished our soup in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like the kind of silence that happens between two people who have both lost something and don't need to explain it. Later that night, after she had gone to her room, the small one at the end of the hall that used to be storage, I stood on the front porch with my coffee and listened to the rain. For the first time in years, the house behind me didn't feel like a place I was just surviving in. It felt like somewhere someone might actually want to stay. And that scared me more than I wanted to admit. 2 weeks after Rosie officially started working at the farm, I drove her into Ashford to pick up feed, vet supplies, and a few sets of work clothes that actually fit her. It was a clear morning, the kind that made the hills look softer than they really were. Rosie sat quietly in the passenger seat, watching the fields roll by. She hadn't said much since we left the farm, but I noticed how her fingers kept tracing the edge of her seatbelt like she was reminding herself it was there. Ashford was a small town. Too small. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business before they even finished their morning coffee. I should have known better than to bring her with me. We stopped at the feed store first, then the hardware store. By the time we reached the grocery store on Main Street, I could already feel the eyes following us. Mrs. Ellison behind the counter smiled too wide when she saw Rosie. Noah Bennett, she said, ringing up the groceries. Who's this lovely young lady? Family? She works at the farm, I answered. Mrs. Ellison's smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. Works at the farm, I see. Rosie didn't flinch. She just met the woman's gaze and said calmly, I take care of the horses. We left without another word, but I knew the damage was done. By the end of the day, half the town would be talking about the strange girl living with the widowed Bennett boy. Rosie stayed quiet on the drive home. I didn't push her. 3 days later, the past she had been running from finally caught up. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in the barn checking the foal's leg when I heard the low rumble of an engine coming up the dirt road. Rosie was scattering hay in the paddock. The moment she heard the sound, her entire body went rigid. She dropped the bucket and took 2 steps back until her shoulders hit the barn wall. Rosie? She didn't answer. Her face had gone pale. A black SUV pulled up in front of the barn. 2 men got out. One was in his early 40s wearing an expensive leather jacket and the kind of watch that cost more than my truck. The other was younger, broad-shouldered, clearly there as muscle. The older man looked around the farm like he was appraising it for sale and finding it lacking. Rosalina Alvarez, he called out, voice smooth and cold. Rosie didn't move. I stepped out of the barn and placed myself between them. Who are you? The man's eyes flicked over me with mild distaste. Grant Whitlock. She used to work for me at my estate in Virginia. She left in the middle of the night. Took things that didn't belong to her. Rosie's voice came from behind me, barely above a whisper. I didn't take anything. Grant smiled without warmth. You took my time, my money, my patience. That counts as theft where I come from. I felt heat rise in my chest. She's not going anywhere with you. Grant tilted his head. And who exactly are you supposed to be? The man who owns this land. He laughed once, short and ugly. Cute. Listen, kid, I don't know what sob story she fed you, but Rosalina has a habit of making men feel like heroes. It never lasts. She'll run from you the same way she ran from me. I didn't step back. She's not running from me. Behind me, Rosie's fingers curled into the back of my shirt. Just 2 small points of pressure, but they steadied something inside me. Grant's smile disappeared. He took 1 step closer. Get in the car, Rosalina. I'm willing to forget this little episode if you come quietly. I shook my head. She's not going anywhere. The younger man started forward. I didn't move. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The only sound was the wind moving through the trees and the foal shifting restlessly in his stall. Finally, Grant let out a slow breath and smiled again, this time colder. She's going to ruin your life, Bennett. Girls like her always do. You think you're saving her, but she'll destroy you the same way she tried to destroy me. He turned and walked back to the SUV. Before getting in, he looked over his shoulder one last time. This isn't over. The vehicle disappeared down the road in a cloud of red dust. Rosie slid down the barn wall until she was sitting on the ground, arms wrapped around her knees. I crouched in front of her. You okay? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. No, but I'm used to it. I hated that answer. That night, after the sun had gone down and the house was quiet, Rosie told me everything. We sat at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of tea that had long gone cold. She kept her sleeves pulled down over her wrists at first. Then, halfway through the story, she pushed them up. The scars were faint but unmistakable, thin white lines and older purple marks where someone had gripped her too hard, too many times. She had worked at Whitlock Equestrian Estate for almost 2 years. At first it was just the horses, grooming, feeding, exercising. Grant had been charming in the beginning. Then the demand started. Longer hours, extra chores around the main house, cooking for his guests, cleaning up after parties that went until 3 in the morning. He stopped paying her on time, then he stopped paying her at all, saying he was holding her wages to cover damages she had supposedly caused. When she tried to leave the first time, he took her passport and driver's license, told her she wouldn't survive without him, that no one else would hire a girl with no papers and no references. The night she ran, Grant had been drinking. He cornered her after a dinner party and tried to pull her into one of the guest rooms. She fought him off, grabbed what she could, and ran. She hitchhiked, slept in gas stations, and walked for days until she reached my gate. When she finished, the kitchen was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I didn't know what to say. Everything I wanted to tell her felt too small. Finally, I reached across the table and rested my hand near hers, not quite touching. No one is taking you away from here unless you want to go. Rosie looked at me for a long time. Her eyes were dry, but something in them had cracked open. You don't know what he's capable of. Maybe not, but I know what I'm capable of. What's that? I'll stand at the door. A single tear slipped down her cheek, then another. She didn't make a sound, just sat there while the tears fell onto the table between us. I didn't pull her into my arms right away. I didn't want to scare her. I simply placed a clean napkin close to her hand. After a minute, Rosie reached out and took my hand instead. Her fingers were cold. I covered them with my other hand and held on. In that moment, whatever had been growing between us stopped being just gratitude or kindness. It became something neither of us had words for yet. But we both felt it. Grant didn't waste time. 3 days after he left the farm, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. Inside were legal papers, formal accusations that Rosie had stolen jewelry from a guest at his estate and broken her employment contract. There was also a request for the local police to question her. The language was cold and precise, the kind of paperwork designed to scare people into silence. Rosie read the papers at the kitchen table, her face growing paler with every line. When she finished, she folded them carefully and set them down like they might explode. I have to go, she said. I was standing at the counter pouring coffee. I stopped mid-pour. No, you don't. Noah, he's not going to stop. He'll drag you into this. He'll make your life hell just because you helped me. I can't let that happen. I turned to face her. You think if you leave, I'll feel better? At least you won't be his target. Rosie. I set the coffee pot down harder than I meant to. From the moment you knocked on my gate, I was already in this. You don't get to decide for me now. She looked at me for a long moment, eyes bright with unshed tears. Then she whispered, Why? Why are you doing all this for me? The question hung in the air between us. I could have given her the easy answers. I didn't want to see someone get hurt. It was the right thing to do. I couldn't turn my back. But none of those felt true anymore. I walked to the back door and opened it. The sky was heavy with clouds. A storm was coming. I stepped out onto the porch and waited. After a few seconds, Rosie followed. We stood side by side watching the wind move through the apple trees. I wake up every morning now and the house doesn't feel empty, I said quietly, because you're in the kitchen making coffee, because I can hear you talking to the horses like they understand every word, because for the first time in 3 years, I actually want to fix more than just broken fences and leaking roofs. I want to fix the parts of my life I gave up on. Rosie's breath caught. I care about you, I continued, not like someone I'm saving, like someone I don't want to lose. She turned her face away, but I saw the tears fall anyway. I don't even know if I have anything left to give anyone. You don't have to prove you're good enough to be loved. That broke her. Rosie covered her face with both hands and sobbed. Quiet, shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and old. I stepped closer and wrapped my arms around her. She clung to me like she was afraid the wind might carry her away. I held her tighter as the first drops of rain began to fall. We stood there in the rain for a long time. No words. Just the sound of the storm and her breathing against my chest. It wasn't a kiss. It was something heavier. Something that mattered more. The court date was set for 2 weeks later in the county courthouse in Lancaster. I hired a lawyer named Maya Chen who came highly recommended. She was sharp, no nonsense, and didn't sugarcoat anything. Whitlock isn't just trying to get her back, Maya told us after reviewing everything. He's trying to destroy her credibility so she'll never speak against him again. Rosie almost didn't go. The morning of the hearing, she stood in the hallway with her bag packed, looking at the front door like it was the edge of a cliff. "I can still leave," she said. "You don't have to do this." I picked up my keys. "I'm not asking you to stay for me. I'm asking you to stay for yourself. But I'll be right there either way." She looked at me for a long time. Then she set the bag down. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Grant sat at the plaintiff's table in a tailored suit, looking every inch the successful businessman. His lawyer was expensive. Rosie sat beside Maya, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. I sat directly behind her. When it was her turn to speak, Rosie stood up. Her voice shook at first. Then it steadied. She told the truth. She told them about the long hours, the unpaid wages, the passport he took, the bruises, the night he tried to force her into a room. She didn't cry. She just spoke until there was nothing left to say. Grant's lawyer tried to paint her as unstable, ungrateful, a thief. But then Maya called our final witness, June Miller, a woman who had worked at Whitlock's estate 6 months before Rosie. June walked in, sat down, and told almost the exact same story. Control, threats, stolen documents, fear. The room went silent. When the judge ruled in our favor, dismissing all charges and referring Grant's conduct to the proper authorities for investigation, Rosie didn't react right away. She just sat there, staring at her hands. Outside on the courthouse steps, the afternoon sun felt too bright after the dim courtroom. Rosie stood at the top of the stairs for a long time, wind pulling at her hair. Then she turned to me. "I'm free," she said, like she was testing the words. "Aren't I?" I nodded. "Yeah, you're free." Her face crumpled. This time the tears came freely without shame or fear. I pulled her into my arms right there on the courthouse steps while people walked past us. She buried her face in my shoulder and cried until she couldn't anymore. For the first time since I met her, Rosie Alvarez wasn't running. And for the first time in 3 years, neither was I. After the hearing, Rosie didn't leave. She stayed, but this time it was different. She opened her own bank account, got her documents back, and signed a real employment contract with weekly pay. Every Friday, I handed her an envelope and she took it without hesitation. She was building something, slowly, carefully, on her own terms. One evening in early fall, while we were sitting on the back porch watching the horses graze, she told me her idea. "I want to start something here," she said. "Not just boarding or trail rides. Something for people who've been through things. People who don't know how to trust anymore. We could offer slow rides, grooming sessions, quiet time with the horses, no pressure, just presence." I looked at her. "Healing rides?" She nodded. "Some people can't talk about what happened to them, but they can stand next to a horse and breathe again." I was skeptical at first, but I trusted her. We started small, just 3 people the first weekend. A veteran who hadn't slept through the night in years, a woman who had left an abusive marriage, a teenager who had stopped speaking after her parents' divorce. Rosie led them with a gentleness I had never seen before. She didn't push. She simply showed them how to be still. By the end of the month, we had a waiting list. The farm changed. The silence I had lived in for so long was replaced by voices, laughter, the sound of hooves on soft earth. People came and left lighter than they arrived. Rosie moved through it all like she had finally found the place she was meant to be. One afternoon in late October, we sat under the old apple tree behind the house. Golden leaves drifted down around us. The foal Rosie had saved that first night was now a strong yearling, running clumsy circles in the paddock. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't opened the gate that night? I try not to, I said. I do. Her voice was soft. I think my life would have ended somewhere on Route 17. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly. I would have disappeared. I turned to look at her. You didn't disappear. Because of you. No, I said. I only opened the gate. You're the one who walked through it. Rosie studied my face for a long moment. Then she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't born from fear or gratitude or adrenaline. It was slow, certain, and real. The kind of kiss that happens when two people have finally stopped running from everything that came before. A year later, we hung a new sign at the entrance to the farm. Bennett and Alvarez Healing Farm. Rosie stood beside me in a denim jacket, wind tugging at her hair, watching as I secured the last screw. She looked different from the girl who had stood at my gate in the rain. Stronger, lighter, whole. You sure you want my name on it? She asked. I glanced at her. You think this place still belongs to just me? She smiled. The real one. The one that reached her eyes. That night we sat on the front porch after the last visitors had gone. The air smelled like autumn and wood smoke. Somewhere in the barn a horse nickered softly. Rosie rested her head on my shoulder, fingers laced through mine. The night you asked if I wanted to stay, she said quietly, I said yes because I had nowhere else to go. I waited. Now, she continued, I'm still here because I choose to be. I turned my head and kissed the top of her hair. Below us, the farm stretched out in the darkness. Fences mended, lights glowing in the barn, the old apple tree standing watch. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was alive. I thought about the version of myself who used to sit out here alone every night, trying not to feel anything. That man felt like someone I used to know. I looked at Rosie. Want to stay? I asked. She squeezed my hand. Yes, she said. But this time, it's not because I'm afraid to leave. She turned to me, eyes clear and steady. It's because I finally found the place I want to stay.